What's up, humans, and welcome to a new Psicoactivo. Happy Saturday, everybody. Okay, so based on the report that I did yesterday, there was a lot of things that happened. I just want to make a quick clarification. The report that I did was a follow-up of what I did last year with the James Webb telescope story that had to do with briefings within the walls of Congress to um, Congress staffers and potentially even Congress people in unclassified settings about something that was potentially coming. Initially, I thought that only Lou Elizondo was the one doing that. But then as time kept going by, I kept hearing the name of Karl Nell. And when since the information was way too convoluted and there was a lot of misinformation going about this event, I realized that it was time for me to say what I know, what I heard. And that is that Karl Nell's name was one of the names that was mentioned constantly in these unclassified briefings. So that's what I wanted to say. A lot of what I say constantly gets misinterpreted and misquoted. And I get it. People need to spin whatever narrative they have, but I just want to clarify that. I'm just doing a report. I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I still think that Karl Nell is working for disclosure. I just disagree on some of the aspects of the disclosure that people like him or others may want to impose on people because it kind of feels that way. One of the reactions that I got from the report that I did came from one of the UFO researchers that is very well known within the community. In my opinion, she's one of the most well-connected people in the space, and I really respect her. And whenever she talks about something, I tend to pay attention because she knows who she speaks to. She knows who she's connected to, and I do value her information. So I would love to welcome you guys to Miss Courtney Marchesani. Welcome, Courtney. How you doing?
Hey, good job on getting the name right. That's usually half the battle in the intro, but you did it.
I was thinking about asking you, but I'm like, I mean, we both have Italian blood, so it should be named like that. So yeah.
I don't have Italian blood, but I'm Italian by name because
Yeah.
of my family. So I have a whole like European mutt background, but thank you. I appreciate that. Way to go. When you're in Italy, they say it the first time the right way.
Thank you, though. So I'm sorry that it's in like short notice, this, and that we're not doing this under different circumstances. But two of your tweets of the reaction of this were very interesting, and I would like for you to tell me what was the initial reaction to the set of news that I released, and what is the information that you have heard of that you can share with the people so far of this information about Nell.
Well, I was at once relieved that you did your video. Now I just went on X and kind of refreshed and saw somebody was like, take it down. First of all, it's not my place to take anybody's videos down. But I just want to tell you, I personally was relieved by what you said. I think that my own experience with it, with that rumor, I've been pretty clear on X about the history of it, my encountering it, my trying to track down the origination of it. And right now on Twitter, there's just a bunch of mudslinging going on. So when it comes to, Karl Nell, I have met him several times at the Soul Symposium because he's presented there twice. In 2023, he presented on catastrophic disclosure and the implications of it. And he went through a very detailed presentation on, why controlled disclosure is preferred. And so that's been my, interactions with him and where I've read his work and seen his work.
Okay. And what do you think about his idea of catastrophic disclosure versus controlled disclosure? Because I keep seeing people that were initially on board the control disclosure stuff, but then a few months ago, things started changing within the community. And I'm not just talking about people from the intelligence community, which is pretty clear And I get that people are not trustworthy. I mean, are not trusting of these people, but I keep seeing also people who are well known in the UFO researcher community that have been at this for way longer than all of these governments people have been at this, that also don't agree with it. So what is your take on that specifically?
100% with you on researchers who have been at this for a long time. I'll just give a more recent relevant example. When you saw Joe Rogan and Rep. Luna talking about remote viewing, it was like, for me, very slow and monotonous, having had that as a subject area of research for a long time. Now, I'm not faulting them for not knowing and just kind of going through the reading room at the CIA for the first time. But I do think that's a classic example of people who have been doing it for a long time, and government folks who have been in these, government-sponsored investigations. Jay Stratton being one of the first and foremost who has been involved in DC programs looking into UAPs. And so you see them coming out now and being forward and transparent about the work they did in the past and how that's been, utilized coming forward, and then their place in disclosure. So you're right, 100% on that. And there's a bunch of them. And so we find ourselves with the leadership, right, of disclosure. And we didn't know that Karl Nell for a long time was behind the scenes. I think his first appearance in the scene was at SALT. You pointed that out in your video, which I thought was well done. You talked about, his various fingerprints on these things. And so I was tracking the UAPDA when it was being put through the first time through Congress. Certainly not an expert, but I've definitely helped pass bills before. I've done lobbying before, advocacy. And so I have had a hand in other types of legislation. So one of the things that was disconcerting to me going in and doing advocacy and a little bit of lobbying for the UAPDA is I made personal phone calls to people who were involved with advocacy efforts and was told patently, it's not your business. It's none of your business, okay? People that are, relied upon for information, or I was also told there's a bigger picture. There's a bigger picture. It doesn't matter who wrote it. We all have to get on the same page and pretty much like stand down, like back away. And so when you did your video, I thought it was good and a revelation to people who didn't know who wrote the UAPDA and made comments on it. I don't think it should be so divisive. And I also don't think it should be so scandalous. I think it's okay to ask questions, and that's my position. So if there's a bunch of backlash for us just asking who was behind this, what nonprofit potentially supported it, what money paid for it, was it our money through donations or other things? I don't think those are improper questions to ask at this stage of the game.
They're not. And just to be clear, the fact that Nell was like the main person in the draft that influenced it, that was public already through, I believe, Joe Murgia, but it didn't get that much attention because nobody really, when they heard it and when they hear the rumor, I noticed and I sensed that there was hesitation. And I realized that it was because maybe Karl is very adamant that it should be that way, that it should be that UAPDA. And I kept like getting puzzled by this sort of control over this should pass, and I saw Sean Munger's proposal too on the debrief. Sure. And I was like, this makes more sense. Why aren't people paying attention to this? And I realized, I was like, okay, so somebody needs to like be more vocal about this and just like lay the cards on the table as they are. And people need to know who is really pushing for this and what the implications are. I don't know what do you think about, for example, first about Sean Munger's proposal? Do you think it's better than the UAPDA?
It's great. And I think it should be very competitive in the process. And I do think that there's something to be said for doing lobbying where you can take the most strength from your support and your base. And so I think that was one initially where a lot of the trouble started, was because, you know, there wasn't a clear national advocacy effort. In other types of bills, omnibus bills, other legislation, there are people that work across the aisle, and they also tap into their constituency, but also different types of organizations to support it. So one of the failures that I saw with the UAPDA is that, you know, it passed through the Senate, and then it was, you know, largely because of eminent domain, controversial. And so you saw the power players who came in at the last minute and scuttled it, and the reasons why. And so when people say, you know, this wasn't a good thing, well, okay, if it's not a good thing, eminent domain has been controversial. Let's look at it together, collectively. But I think where it's broken down is in this alternative option to the UAPDA, which might be better legislation. You know, you're seeing a potential new lobby around pushing UAPDA, and I don't know the reasons why, but Sean's legislation is great. I've read it. I support it. I don't see why we can't have conversations about it and have it be so competitive if it might be better for disclosure.
Yeah, and there definitely can't be conversations about it, because I've spoken to multiple people who have tried to propose something different to what Karl Nell is offering, and the response from him has been very swift. It's like, no, we're doing it this way. And that is really concerning to me. That is what essentially worries me about this whole attempt to push the controlled disclosure narrative. I just want to know, what do you think is at the very bottom of this, or the underlying kind of goal in this? Do you think really there might be some kind of data that they have that they're not sharing? Or do you think there is some kind of an interest going on there with aerospace companies involved, that they are like really truly racing for this tech, but it's not really country against country, it's factions against factions? What do you think is going on?
I think there's a lot of underpinnings. I think that the skiffs are part of it. You know, the ongoing attempts to get people in the skiffs and what they can testify to and level of clearances, that's been a barrier and a challenge. Moving things forward, which would essentially be one part of the impetus to help with whistleblowers and protections and why, and the claim, you know, that there's been an 80-year cover-up or secrecy of the legacy programs. So that's one piece of the puzzle. The whistleblowers, getting everyone in line, who's going to testify, what they're going to testify to, that's all being carefully coordinated. And to some degree, and even though it's a taboo word, I would say controlled. Maybe not as much control right now as there have been in the past, through the past rounds, but it's been tight controlled. So that's one underpinning. Because the NDAA that was passed, changes were made, and there were some updates brought in there for whistleblower protections and for other things. So it's a large issue. It's a big issue, or a big problem is what you would call that in, you know, in drafting any kind of legislation to solve a problem, but you have to take things chunk by chunk. So I think that's one part of it, is control of the whistleblower's testimony and who gets in the skiff. I think the second part of your question, bearing on aerospace, and the reason why I wrote my Twitter post the way I did is because I think it's a very complex issue about financial incentives. And I didn't want to poke, you know, the bear or put anybody into any kind of allegations or anything, but I think it is important for people who are outside of these settings to do accountability and to look at the way things have been formulated, including private companies and private interests, while the UAPDA was going into passage and hoping to be passage, and now another round of it going in, because you can't look at all of this and say there's no financial or vested interest involved.
Yeah, and also I would add,
you can't. You can't. There are ties to companies that have started, and I'm, you know, understanding capitalism and all of that, but I think it warrants fresh eyes to look back into a lot of that. So I do.
You said something key there, that recently started companies. That's very important for people to understand, because it's not just like the aerospace companies that are already in this. It's also a lot of companies that have suddenly popped up that we didn't know about. And then we start looking at names that are linked to those. And it's like, so what's going on here? There is vested interest here. Why? I just wanted to point that out real quick.
Well, that's where the intelligence might point to the reason why. When you're asking me, do they have intelligence that would, you're bringing up in the context of catastrophic, which that's fine, but you put a pin in that, and you look at this other aspect of, is it possible that during these stints, during a government position or whatever, there was intelligence that came across that did show some of that there was advanced technology, and it can't be ruled out when you look at the way that the leadership have established organizations, companies, and then everything that goes on the back channel, all the partnerships, all the agreements that are made. And so most of that we don't see. Most people don't see the behind the scenes business tactics or the allegiances or whatever. But I do think it warrants a look. Yeah, I think that's part of it too. Or I wouldn't have brought it up. I'm not making accusations towards anybody, but I think people should look at it. Yes.
And also, I think that an aspect of this that plays a huge role also is the release of that film, Age of Disclosure, because there seems to be a lot of messaging there that has to do with this arms race between countries. And we know that Jay Stratton is involved in that deeply, Dan Farah. So I wanted to ask you, do you think there might be like an effort that we're not seeing that involves all of these people in this control disclosure? Or do you think, for example, whatever Nell is doing is separate to whatever Jay Stratton is doing? What do you think about that?
The age of disclosure was approved by the Senate Select Intelligence Committee. So we know that the people who went in that film to go on the record or to testify to certain aspects of UAPs and NHI went through this process. And it's been done for other movies, and it's been a controversial process because of lawsuits around intelligence that has been, portrayed in movies. But yes, that is part of it. And it was very clear. It was very clear last year, early on, maybe even at the end of 2023, that this film was in process. There was scuttlebutt that Peter Thiel funded it. Okay, so then you've got somebody who's interested in UAP technologies funding this. So that's the other financial vested interest, because there was intelligence that came out that he went to into the CIA with various individuals. That's also out there on the record in order.
You're talking about Peter Thiel.
Yeah, to get the either Lockheed transfer, right, through to ATIP, which was an agreement that was made that was broken. That didn't happen, supposedly. And then also that there was his own vested interest in getting back engineered tech or NHI tech into Silicon Valley. That he wanted that to go to Silicon Valley for tech development.
Yeah.
So when you look at that entertainment project, it was approved by the SSIC. 2, Peter Thiel likely funded it or funded a portion of it, rumored, alleged, whatever, but that's out there. And then 3, all the witnesses that were in that for the screening that have now come out, they all have various testimony that document NHI or UAP or stories on bases. There's a new round of witnesses. Some of the witnesses that were reported to have gone and done interviews and were on film that didn't make it into the movie, they were older people who were in the military who already had stories that were in the community, but this was going to be a leveling up. And the reason why I say the leveling up part, age of disclosure, if I were to give it spin for people to think about it, it was to come out into more of a wide distribution in order for the general public to be aware of this, military and governmental witnesses, and to get the media, the legacy media, CBS, ABC, NBC, to pick it up and to spread it in wider distribution underneath an entertainment project.
Recently, Joe Rogan spoke about this, and he said that the main goal of the movie, although it's not overtly mentioned, is to get mass amnesty to legacy program people. And that really caused a lot of controversy, because I don't know about you, but I don't want to give mass amnesty to people who committed murder or other really terrible crimes that have been committed over 80 years. What do you think about that? Because I don't know how much information you have about the legacy program people, but I don't know what you think about that.
It was well before age of disclosure. It was during the first round of investigations when money was diverted from the COVID bill to set up a task force. It was Gillibrand and Rubio that backed that task force to go out and do a wide cattle call is what I like to call it, to all the intelligence agencies to put forth stories, witness testimony, information into this database so they could do investigations. And that report came out to Congress. I think that was in 2021, 2022. Anyway, they brought out the report, their findings, right? And at that time, that is when amnesty or immunity, right, legal immunity, came into the conversations and dialogue of people who were looking at protections to go deeper into witness testimony. So it predates age of disclosure, but Joe Rogan has obviously heard that, somebody who's told him that. So that's information to you too as well, and all of us, that the people who were creating it intended to try to move that effort forward in order to provide immunity for maybe even more people who are going to come in and testify after the film had aired.
And what do you think about that concept of mass amnesty? Do you agree with it?
I think people are thinking of amnesty in terms of the past crimes that have been committed, and sure, of course, wet works and and murder and intimidation, harassment, tapping, surveillance. I mean, I'm thinking that people are thinking in those terms, but I want people to think in new terms, in terms of the immunity. When you look at what has been done since 2017 to move disclosure forward, you're talking about contemporary people who have either just left service, are still in service, or, just recently, I would say maybe in the past 10 to 20 years, okay, have been working for disclosure. And so when you look back to the witnesses and the sources in the debrief article that came out when David Grusch broke his story, Karl Nell was one of the people who validated David Grusch's work and said he was, legit. And then Jonathan Gray was the other witness that has never been revealed. And so you have to think, I think, in terms of what's going on now, not what went on 50 years ago. And that is certainly an issue. But that's where people go in their minds of what crimes have been done. I think people need to start asking themselves, what risks, what laws were broken in this latest round of disclosure that we're in right now? That includes, getting videos out from classified places illegally. It is, people, whistleblowers talking, in terms of classified information that shouldn't be leaked. And so these things are all illegal, right?
Yeah.
So I think people are mostly thinking about the past 80 years, but I think people need to bring their thinking into what happened in the last 10.
Wait, so what about cases like the one, for example, with Amy Eskridge? Because she's an interesting case, and that I think should be paid attention to as well. And that happened within that time frame. And she was presumably looking into a lot of this and very involved, but there's a lot of pushback about what she was allegedly doing or not. The sad part is that she's no longer with us. and there needs to be a little more clarity on what happened with her, because she was clearly involved in something related to this. So where does that fit in?
There's been some progress, on that. There was witnesses who have come forward and said that they saw Amy Eskridge at SEU. She was reportedly not there. She was supposed to be there. Everybody was expecting her to be there at that very important SEU conference. And 2 people apparently saw her at SEU. So that's new information. I had always heard in back channels that she met with David Grusch and gave witness testimony. I was never able to confirm that, but that was one report that they did meet, and she gave information for task force or for the upcoming Aero office that was going to be stood up. So the timing of everything, is very suspicious. Not confirmed whether David Grusch did meet or not. She did meet Lou Elizondo. She did meet Hal Puthoff. She was supposed to be in one of the History Channel shows, according to her own narrative, and met with people and knew people at Redstone Arsenal. I think she was very much in the mix at Huntsville and would have been a resource to tap, obviously, but her bailiwick was really, propulsion, advanced propulsion. And so she was less of a whistleblower from my understanding and my looking into all of it on potential UAP. She was an experiencer, so she did have a UAP experience. I don't know the extent to that. I think it's still befuddled in a lot of the details, but some witnesses have come forward. There have been other journalists who have decided to take that story on and cover it, and they've gotten phone calls. So there has been some progress made, but there's still a lot of obfuscation about the facts. So we don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that. I wanted to ask you about Soul a little bit, because they seem to be like sort of their own echo chamber of what's going on. And all of the big names go there, they give their presentations, they speak to Soul people, but they seem to be like very closed circuit kind of endeavor. And I wanted to ask what your take on whatever they're trying to do is. What are your main observations about them? Because they do seem to be like ground zero for controlled disclosure, in my opinion, at this point. And whatever Karl Nell is doing, he does it through them in many cases too. So what's your take on that?
So before Soul was established, there was another conference, that was organized, and select folks were invited in, and that was San Marino in Italy. And so academics went, people in the community went, people in the government went on a non-official capacity, international people came, researchers. And so that is really kind of the origin story of Soul. And then not a lot of people knew about it because it was an exclusive invite only. And I think the reason for that was really to keep a lot of ufology to some extent out, the more fringe parts of it, and to keep it narrow focus on disclosure going forward and how to do that. And so then it was said that there would be another one in the US. And that was when Soul and the Soul Foundation was propped up. And it was a very big deal because the people that came to it, who are, as you've said, many of them like Hal Puthoff, like lifelong people at this point, into various types of studies, government-funded programs or intelligence on this topic, they were able to come out in one forum. And Chatham House rules were used, to keep everything really secure. And they got to be able to have the freedom in a setting to allow their work to come out. Beatrice was there and did one of her presentations, and we've seen where she's come. So I do think it is a safe place for researchers, academics, scientists to come together in a spirit of open-mindedness about the UAP topic. Do I think that there have been exclusivity things from the beginning? Yeah. You know, even in Italy, people who didn't get an invitation, who felt they deserved to have an invitation, you know, got left out. So there is that part of it. You have to go through a process. You have to apply. You know, you have to, and it's gotten stricter and stricter in the last couple years. So I think it is still, though, especially in Silicon Valley, the place where people will go to do those presentations and do that, allow their work to be seen and questions to be asked. So in a way, it's a huge step forward for the community. And originally, David Grusch was involved with setting the LLC up.
Yeah, I know. I was invited, but I rejected the invitation because I have my differences with the way in which they do things. I come from a third world country. It just doesn't sit well with me that people living in countries that are more privileged can speak condescendingly about other people from other countries that are like asking honest questions about the way in which they do things, and instead they get blocked on X or stuff like that. I got blocked. I was part of the mass blocking when Soul came out with their tears. So that rubs me the wrong way. So I hope that they do change some of those things. I know that in the academic world, that's pretty much how it works. I get that, but we're not dealing with just a national effort. Soul should be international, really. And there's a lot of international people there, and they should understand the sensibilities of people from other countries that perhaps don't have the same access to the same type of information, or so that's where I differ a little bit with what they do, and I won't change my stance until they change it. So I guess I don't know.
What would you want them to change?
Just the way in which they address the overall population that doesn't have access to first world country information, and access, because I had a lot of different emails and messages from people from Ecuador, Peru, countries that don't have that same level of access, and they were like, even the lower tier is a little bit too expensive for me, and I want to know what's going on, and it feels really frustrating that they release their videos, for example, that are free, yeah, but like a month later, and that can be really frustrating for people that don't have the same level of access. And I completely understand that coming from Mexico,
Well, I'm going to keep my hopes high that maybe in expressing these, concerns, I think as an organization, they should be open to hearing concerns and constructive criticism. And let's hope that maybe you become part of the delegation for, certain types of countries in order to get rights out to those individuals. That might be a very nice linchpin that you could serve. So I'm gonna hold out hope for that. Cross my fingers.
Well, we'll see. Let's see what happens. Hopefully they do listen. I don't know. I wanted to ask you a couple more things before I let you go, because one of those things is the current spat between Louis Elizondo and Congresswoman Luna. And I've been following this for a while, as you well know. And I've been seeing, for example, Matt Laszlo at Askapol being increasingly frustrated with the mixed messages he gets from different people in Congress. And now we have
just gets abused.
Yeah. Shout out to Matt Laszlo for
God love
taking
him.
the abuse.
He continues to keep his beat, and
Yeah.
he gets, no or brusque replies or whatever, but he just keeps going back. So God love him, and everybody loves you, Matt. So keep up the good work.
He's doing the best work out of all of us, though. I can guarantee you that. And
well, he wasn't that well known, and then he did this survey. I don't know if you saw the survey. It must have been like 3 years ago, maybe it was 4, where he did this survey of all the members in Congress as like a starting point of if they knew about the UAP issue or not. And that was what brought my attention, because I was like, okay, that's demographics, that's real statistics, that's actually getting information that could be used in diplomacy. And so, foot in the door.
And it's a really unique niche that was needed, and he filled it.
Yeah.
That was pretty amazing when I saw it too.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you about this spat, because he keeps getting mixed messages, but there's also something weird going on with the skiff flu UFO bigwigs, which is Lou Elizondo, David Grusch, Christopher Mellon. Those are the ones that potentially Luna was referring to, although she didn't name them. It was pretty clear afterwards that she was also talking about Lou, because Lou took it at heart. What do you think is going on there? Do you think Congress is hiding something and they're really not really allowing people in skiffs? Or do you think people like Lou or Mellon are withholding something and they don't want to go in? What do you think is going on there?
There has been, emails communicated. There has been requests. There has been side discussions, and it's all been about organizing it. And this goes way back into, I think, April it was, about who's going to say what, who's got what clearances still, and what they can say. So who has the right to tell a former person of government or a whistleblower or somebody with a clearance what they can actually testify to in a skiff? That, to me, is highly suspicious. It also looks like undue influence and steering the information a very specific way. I'm not going to say who it was. It's going to come out who it was. Maybe this person had very specific reasons for why he wanted people to testify to certain things, but I think that's one of the reasons. I think that's one of the reasons why it was scuttled. Nobody knows that. Everybody wants to place blame on Luna's, staffers. That wasn't it. It goes to a much more heart of a much more political reason around disclosure as to why. And so do I think that people have been like pussyfooting around while also bludgeoning other people? Yeah, I do. Yeah. And I think that puts people into a very defensive mode to justify actions, scheduling conflicts. But I think all those things are just rationalizations for what the heart of it really is, and nobody knows that yet, but it's going to come out.
That's where I tried speculating a little bit on my previous video on Nell, because it kind of feels to me, and this is just speculation, this is what I want people to understand, that I wasn't saying this is like true information or real information. This is just me speculating, that I think that it kind of feels like people like Nell, people like Grusch, people like, I don't know, Jay Stratton, they seem to be following orders of a much bigger plan. And I wanted to ask you, based on that, though, about this alleged or possible hostile witness list that David Grusch mentioned already in the hearings. Who do you think could be like the best option, and who do you see could be like the most possible one?
Well, there was always controversy between Greer's list, right, of his, whistleblowers, which the accusation by a lot of people on the other side that a lot of them were not even vetted, properly, to David Grusch's list, is you're looking at a much higher level of intelligence gathering, vetting, most likely higher access level on his list. So, I can't name names, of who I think the hostiles are. I think that it is, mind-boggling with this latest skiff cancellation and what's come out, on Joe Rogan about the allegations or the sniff test that they don't want to testify because they're hiding something. There's a lot more to that. There's a lot more behind that. The breakdown of communication. Yes, the security issue of people's, security clearances. It's not just like David Grusch in his testimony could tell in a public hearing. He had to get a closed door hearing. You kept saying that. Lou kept saying the same thing. So I think the real scary thing right now for people who are trying to assess the field and, you know, see which way the wind is going, you know, it's, it might result in a total flipping of who is testifying to what. And so that's why I'm saying when people are talking about immunity, we might be talking about immunity for people that we know.
Yeah, and people who didn't do anything wrong too, not necessarily.
I think it depends on what you define wrong. If it is something that broke the law, in the eyes of the law, it was wrong. Did it serve a greater purpose for transparency on a cover-up for 80 years? That's where immunity comes into play legally.
Okay. Okay. So in with that, in the context of that, Stephen Diener from Unidentified Alien Podcast just released a video saying that he spoke to someone who confirmed that September 9 would be the date for the new hearings.
Hey guys, Stephen Diener here, UAP. Didn't expect to do a video here on a Saturday, but I just got done with a very revealing call with a source in DC, and here's what we covered. Two things. Number one, the new hearing, so details on that. Number two, the misunderstanding between Representative Anna Paulina Luna and Lou Elizondo that has kind of snowballed and taken on a life of its own, unfortunately. So I want to spread the word here from this word I just got during this conversation. Number one, the hearing, it's happening September 9th. This is what I was told, very reliable source. On September 9th, they will have the next UAP hearing. It's open to the public. It's going to run pretty much just like the other one ran last November. There's going to be 4 witnesses. That's the plan. At least 1 or 2 of these witnesses are first-hand witnesses. That's been the speculation. I know Eric Burleson had put it out there that that's what they wanted to try to get. I think he said it on my show. He said it in a couple of different interviews that he wanted to try to get first-hand witnesses for the next hearing. So it seems like that's going to happen. So I was told by my source that at least 1 or 2 of these 4 witnesses that are going to be testifying at the new hearing on September 9th are going to be first-hand witnesses. So that's going to be huge, to say the least. So looking forward to that. Again, open to the public September 9th. Now, when it comes to the skiff flu scuffle, I think is what I'm going to call it, between Anna Paulina Luna and Lou Elizondo. So obviously all the drama recently, Representative Luna is on Joe Rogan and she's talking about it there. Lou Elizondo didn't like what he heard. He's defending himself. Everybody's taking sides. So here's what I was told. It never needed to get to this far, is what I was told. That it all stemmed from a big misunderstanding. Everybody wants the same thing. I think that's the biggest message I got away from this conversation. Anna Paulina Luna and Lou Elizondo and everybody working on this in DC all have the same goal, which is to get answers, to get disclosure out to the American people. That is the goal. And unfortunately, what happens sometimes is there's kind of drama that gets mixed in the middle, and we lose sight of those goals and we get lost in the drama. And that's what's happened here. So the important message that I want to try to get across after the conversation I just had is that this really stems from a misunderstanding. David Grusch, from what I was told, had a health issue a couple of days before the skiff was supposed to take place in April. Everything was lined up. Lou was in town. He had other people there with him to do this. Obviously, Christopher Mellon was supposed to be part of it. As soon as David Grusch had to back out due to health issues, not the flu, due to health issues, he was kind of the linchpin. He was the one holding this all together. He was one that was going to lead the conversation and really the driving force behind all of this inside the skiff. Once he was out, everything kind of fell apart. And that's where I think a lot of people ended up getting angry at each other. Then Christopher Mellon ended up calling out sick, essentially, with the flu. He said he had the flu. Lou Elizondo never had the flu. Lou Elizondo was perfectly healthy. And then with the congressional members were left with Lou Elizondo and his team and anybody else that they were trying to bring in. But because it wasn't exactly what they were looking for, they decided to try to reschedule. That rescheduling led to scheduling conflicts on everybody's end, everybody involved, and it never materialized from there. and that's where you start to have this this infighting and everybody taking sides. The bottom line is it didn't need to get here. That's the message that I was told, and now that I have the backstory to a lot of these things, after speaking to my source, it's very clear to me that there's just a lot of ill will that doesn't need to be there. Everybody has the same goal. Everyone wants the same thing. So I hope to see, my side is, I want everybody to get along. I hope to see Representative Luna and Lou Elizondo try to hash this out without any more escalation, because it doesn't need to be there. They both want the same thing like we all do, which is disclosure. So I hope to see you at the hearing September 9th. I hope to be able to be there in DC. This is the update that I just got. Incredible stuff. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thanks. Stephen Diener here from UAP.
And I just wanted to ask you what information you might share of what you know about that. There's allegedly first-handers coming in, but we don't know anything about almost any of them. At least I don't. I don't know if you do, but whatever you can share would be nice for the people.
2 firsthand witnesses, right? And then also potentially a witness who is maybe like a CE5 protocol person. Maybe, that was just in a discussion I had today about the 2 first-handers, but let's go into the 2 first-handers.
Yeah.
Because part of the deal with the skiffs and coming in to have intelligence community assets come in and share about their witness testimony and what what information they're putting forth is potentially classified, or maybe from a SAP or an unacknowledged SAP. Whereas with these 2 who are firsthand witnesses, are they going to be giving firsthand testimony about the legacy program? What does firsthand witness mean? Does it mean firsthand witness to the legacy program, or does it mean firsthand witness of an NHI? Does it mean a firsthand witness? And so this is what came out in the latest iteration that Chris Mellon talked about. We're only accepting firsthand witnesses, right, going forward. So I think that it begs the question for anybody waiting for the hearing, what are they testifying to? Is it a legacy program thing? I'm going to guess no. I haven't been told that, but that's just my gut feeling. And I think the whole wrangling around the skiff is testifying in the skiffs about the legacy program stuff, the back engineering, and the NHI.
Okay. Do you think that we may get a hostile witness within that list?
No, I'm just going to take an educated guess and say no.
Okay.
I think we would have heard about a subpoena, I think we would have heard scuttlebutt about subpoena powers being used, and they haven't been successful at getting that yet. They've threatened it. It's like the overlording over everybody is that we're going to subpoena you. But the breakdown in Congress is one of the real challenges, I think, for, for all these folks.
Okay, so the last part I want to talk to you about is probably the most complicated, but I think you're uniquely qualified based on what your experience and your time investigating all of this, the ins and outs. There seems to be a division that wasn't there a few years ago within the disclosure movement. Not just the classic Greer versus Elizondo division. I'm talking about within Elizondo's whole sphere. There seems to be a division there, and I can tell. What do you think might be happening there? Because I did a report a few weeks ago about this lawsuit that was already settled between Elizondo and Dan Farah, the director of HF Disclosure. Do you think that has something to do with those divisions, or do you think there's something else going on there?
First of all, I want to look at that case.
Yeah.
So did you get the case file? I'm just curious.
I tried looking for it, but I'm not very good at looking for cases. I'm not an American. I did give it a try, but I think you have to be very savvy in FOIA stuff or the sorts. And I'll keep trying, but I haven't found it yet. No.
Okay. Well, I found what it's regarding. I found the law, and it would be a civil procedure, and it would be a talent. It would be underneath a talent contract. So I did find that. and I'm still working on it based on your announcement of that, and also the other tweets that came out about the parties involved. So I'm working on it. So hopefully an update soon.
Yep.
I will let you know as soon as I get it. And
Okay.
it is difficult, it is difficult. You have to have a certain type of legal background. You have to know how to search those cases, and they don't make it easy. So I think we will find it. I have been using some tools and have some inroads. So let's hope we get that. Then we can take a larger purview on that and see the parties that were named, who's involved. It's already been, named the parties that have been involved. So that tells you that there's more. So once we get that full document, we can go through it all piece by piece and extrapolate out of it. But it has to do with the delay of the movie. And it has to do, obviously the story was initially that it was distribution rights. And I'm sure that's true to a large degree, but you guys breaking the story on the lawsuit shows a much bigger story, right?
Yeah.
But there was also another story happening outside the movie production and the screening, because Lou Elizondo wasn't at the screening. At SCU, when Jay Stratton gave his, speech and thanks and gratitude, he didn't name Lou. That wasn't part of his thank you, and these are the people who I have to give my thanks. So I think it's not just the fact that there's a legal issue. I think it's also, a division in loyalties, maybe also around a way forward. And it's being felt by everybody, because at one time, all these different parties were working together. And it's apparent and very palpable that now they're not. So, how many more complexities do you want to go into it, Pavel?
Yeah, I guess just no, that's good enough, because I think until we get the full picture, speaking more about it publicly would be speculating, and I don't think that's fair for those involved. But I did want to put it out there because there is a division going on, and that is affecting the whole process. And it is affecting, for example, social media being flooded with false information about both parties. And I think that's one of the main problems here. And also one of the reasons why this rumor has been going around for a while. Just to close out, really, this is the really last one. I saw a comment from Jason Sands, who many have questioned whether he's credible or not. There's a lot of people that I really respect within the community that believe that his encounter with this alleged being is real. They believe his story, that story, but there's also a lot of different plot holes, you could call them, and everything that happened afterwards. And he says that this narrative of the invasion or a cataclysm is not true, really. He thinks that legacy program people are afraid that whatever may or may not be coming is coming after tech and biologics, and that there was like some sort of transgression after Roswell. So I just want to ask you what you think about that, and then we'll close it out.
Well, I think that's Jason's story. I mean, that's what he had firsthand knowledge of and what he's testified in Congress to when he was doing surveillance. The surveillance call that he heard was about that specific issue, and that is what he heard. And so that went to Arrow, and you can look through the Arrow report and see his, blatant testimony in there, and they passed it off as a, like a cover. Like he heard that the Grays or this or that, or this specific terminology was cover language, for maybe another program, and he misunderstood it. So, that's his story. But when you put his story adjacent with other stories, that's where people start to like mix and mingle. There was, John Ramirez's, insights into the whole catastrophic angle. Anjali has insights into the catastrophic angle. The woman who was in the Navy rail yard, who, had her testimony as a Navy veteran now, she's shared her testimony. Chris Bledsoe has shared his, prophetic insights, and that was taken seriously by people. So I think you have to take it all with a grain of salt. No offense to anybody.
Yeah.
But, when people are looking at the catastrophic angle, when I made my post recently, that was always the maddening part. And I think that, Ivan was part of his testimony essentially came into that mix as well. So, it was just a new iteration of somebody encountering or confronting that information and then trying to reconcile it, whatever way they reconcile it psychologically, emotionally. And so it depends a lot on the resilience of the person that hears it and how they go into it and how they investigate it. And so I think that your posts have been very good in order to suss out all of that. Will we ever suss it out? No, probably not. So do I go to sleep at night worrying about it? No.
No, we shouldn't be worried. I don't think, because either way, if it's real, if there's some kind of invasion coming and we're all doomed, we can't really do anything about it in the first place. So
Right.
why worry?
Right.
But
I think the interesting part of it, if you want to get down into the real nitty gritty, is that, John Ramirez came out recently. I mean, recent in the last 6 months to a year. And in some of the interviews that he's done, he's been real frank that that was the one topic that the CIA, the agency said, we don't want you to talk about. That's important, that's information. So I think these people, while you can cast aspersions on them all you want, I do think they're trying to do things out of the goodness of their heart and to give information that makes clarifications on things as much as they can without getting their wrists slapped or looking like, absurd.
Yeah. And this includes Karl Nell too. If the information I got is real, that he was part of those conversations in Congress, right?
Yeah, I think that is what you brought to the community, a revelation. And it's important, because I think, like I said, we need to know who's feeding this information into the community. And if they do have intelligence about something like that,
they should share it.
That's where immunity becomes really important, where it's like, it doesn't matter what the classification is. It's like the physics of, having the advanced propulsion and new physics that goes beyond, an individual's individualistic right. It really goes into a humanity aspect. So I agree with you on it. I'm not trying to disparage or mischaracterize Karl Nell. In my post,
Not at all.
I was trying to point things out to people to look at specifically and do research on. I'm not going to go back into all of it. I'm just saying what my specific lines of research has looked at, and money and economics has certainly been part of that. I'm not accusing him of malfeasance or anything like that.
Nope.
But if that is where one catastrophic angle came from, then yeah, I think it is good to try to investigate it and get to the bottom of it. Will we? I don't know. But certainly that's where this was coming from. And I agree with you. It was important to air it out.
We got to keep trying, though.
We are trying. We are doing it.
Yeah.
I think we're in for a really rocky road. And people have been making posts today like, oh, the hearing's coming and now it's time for all the, political stuff and whatever. Well, this is a political issue. You can bury your head in the sand if you want and say it's not, but it is. And politics is the heart of all of it. And maybe nothing gets done, but I think people are still trying to get something done, and that's important.
Yeah, that's true. So I'm going to leave both of the posts that you made in the description, but where can people find you so they can go look at your work more? And which I think it's important. I think people should pay more attention to the research that a lot of women in ufology are doing. And I want to thank you for all the research that you do. You do a shit ton of it. And I'm a rookie though, still, but man,
you're doing great. You're doing great. You really are. You're doing great. You're an independent voice. That's what's needed. It's okay to be critical. Don't let people shout you down and say you shouldn't be doing this or you shouldn't be doing that or take your videos down. It's like you have a right to have a voice, and an independent voice is a good one. It's It is the Band-Aid. It is the ripping off. It is the sunlight, right? All those things, all those metaphors, they are really important because you have a clear sense of neutrality, which is great. And it's nice and it's fresh perspectives. What I think is, you can find me on Twitter. That's the most active place I am on UAP issues. I got into the political side from not a political angle. I got into it from serving on a board called UAP Medical Coalition that looked into medical incidences and UAP contact events. So that's really where my heart and passion is. I got diverted into the political angle because I had some expertise and some experience in past political successes with doing work. And so I thought I could help that organization. And so I've been involved. I helped. I've lended my experience. Now I'm helping with a new study for experiencers and, certain types of substance abuse. I haven't been active with it hands-on with the board, but I support it. So I do some of that. I help write technical papers. I analyze technical papers, white papers. So you can't really find my work. That's the long answer. I kind of pick and choose the things that I want to move forward or help or network with people and get people working on projects together. But you can't really find my UAP work.
I will link your Twitter because that's probably the most important one that people need to know about. You're always very open there and very well sourced. So I will leave that in the description. I do want to have a conversation with you in the future, which is the rabbit hole that I feel the most passionate about, that you well know because you wrote about it, which is Dr. Jacobo Greenberg's life's work. And we're going to go deep into that, just an episode on that later. But for now, I want to thank you for what you're doing. I want to thank you for your time. You've been really generous. Thank you, Courtney.
Yeah, well, thank you for all the work you do and all the sourcing you do. And I think you have a lot of integrity. I will say, for people who go to my X profile, there is a search function where you can go to someone's X profile and search their timeline. And I was there at the screening for The Age of Disclosure and wrote everything down in the movie, all the quotes, all the witnesses, all the people. So that movie has lagged, but I did a comprehensive write-up of all the stuff that I could get out in quotes, quotations, and a summary. So
spoilers.
I would look for that. I'm sure people were pissed off, that I did it, but I wrote as much as I possibly could and put the quotes out there. Not everything, I didn't put everything in there, but I put the critical pieces that I think are important for what's happening now.
Okay. Make sure you check that out. And I want to thank you, Courtney. We'll speak soon. Have a great rest of your weekend.
Sounds good.
All right. Take care. Bye, people. Psicoactivo. Always.